Welcome to the Underground. Today is Saturday, December 20th, already, and it's the winter solstice, right after the new moon. If you're new here, welcome to EarthtoneS. I am your hostess, Kat Moon. Please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and share the video. This is the fifth installment of the series, Ancient Kemet and Other African Contributions to Astrology. We're going through an initiation of sorts. As a collective, it is my opinion that we're going through a transformation and we're learning about the path of the sun through the underworld during winter 2025. So let's get into part 5. I've been excited about sharing this particular one, and I had to tell myself to stop picking at it like a scab of sorts. So I'm looking forward to sharing this particular presentation. And so today we're talking about time. We're talking about sin. And we're also talking about the Zep Tepi. The Zep Tepi is the first time. And in this case, the first time was when Amun rose from the mound or on the mound called the Benben stone. And so the Zep Tepi can be the first time for any increment of time. It could be a minute, it could be an hour, it could be a day, a month, or a year. It could be 100 years or 1,000,000 years. And so time is related to temp. It sets the pace. It's the measure. And so the sine wave here, as shown, always lead back and emanate from the one. And so, as we've done in previous videos, we've broken down some root words and looked at the etymology of some of the words that we use on a daily basis, such as tempo. And so temp is a root word for the rhythm of time, template, tempo, temperature, temperance, with which is relating to the balance or the ability to manage your mental state. Temperaments, temper, again, managing the emotion. And of course, temptation. Now, that root word, as I looked at Webster, has a root word of tempt, and is often related to temp erroneously, although it is related. But of course, we know it means to lure. And so, still talking about movement. And so, sine wave can also be expressed as sin. As we know, anagrams were used, vowels were often omitted, especially in Kemetan language. So, what is the sine wave? First of all, it is the universal duality and vibration. Excuse me, which are two of the 7 principles of Hermetic wisdom, which we can get into later. But it's also the fabric of our physical reality. It can also be expressed as consciousness, as well as the fall from grace. So the rise and fall of consciousness. And it can be expressed as sin to the W being frequency to time, where W again is the frequency expressed in radians per second. Now, what are radians? Radians are simply a measurement or unit of an arc on a circle. So basically, it's just a slice of the pie. And in the world of astrology, those slices often come in 20 and 30-degree increments. But the ancient Kemetans used the base 10. So we're talking about the decans, as we expressed in the first video. So frequency is equal to 1 unit of time. And we can alternately express it as sin by or 2 by pi by f by t, where f is the frequency expressed in hertz. The 2 pi comes from the fact that there are 2 pi radians, and pi or here is simply 6.28 radians in a circle, and the period is just one frequency. So 2 pi, I guess, would be expressed as 6.28 squared, or twice times 2. And if you want to look further into that, you can go to Mathematics Stack Exchange, which is where I got this information. So, as we've also included in previous presentations, we looked at the 7 petitions in the perfect prayer. And so the 6th petition requests that we not be led into temptation, into time, if we're looking at it from a metaphysical standpoint. The fallen angel, the fallen light. We are the lowest form of vibration. So the request is, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, as expressed in scripture, Matthew 6:13, in the King James Version of the Bible. And so this relief here from ancient Kemet shows 3 figures, or 7 figures rather, on a barge supported by Goddess Nut. And we've established that Goddess Nut is the Milky Way. She is separated from Geb, which is the Earth. And so they're the first separation. And so we see here that the sun is also being is ascended and supported by the scarab beetle. And we've also established in previous videos that the scarab beetle is Keppra. So Keppra is going to push the sun into or back into the sky. So these rituals, if I may deviate just for a second, were performed regularly and cyclically to assure that the sun will rise the next day. Because remember, they were being faced with catastrophes. And so they needed the sun to rise, not only for the flooding of the Nile, but for their very survival, because without the sun, we perish. So the Greeks looked at sin as missing the mark. And over the centuries, of course, it stretched and evolved into all possibilities of missing the mark of perfection. And that's simply what it is. And so we're looking at the ebb and flow of life, the going down and rising back up of energy, the L, electricity, which we know is masculine energy. And L is on the line of 0 the 0 point with the body, which is on the atmosphere. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about electromagnetic energy, electromagnetic energy. And so as we think about all of the expressions of good and bad and the duality of states of consciousness, states of being, we see above all of the dynamics of being live and ascension, consciousness, Ma and Ra, which we've established in the last video as being Aset or Isis and Ra, the sun. And so here we've added electricity. We've added the L. So we have that electromagnetic energy that is more dynamic above than it is below. And so below we see Amun. Amun represents dissension. And so he is the Dev El. Dev means God in the Hindu language. And so we see the relief there that takes us back to Brother Ani when he was being judged and first appeared in the underground. And so as we cross that line of demarcation, if you will, we express it in terms of an offense. Someone has crossed the line. And so here we have our assimilation of the story of the sun in the underworld, because actually that's where we are in the cycle of the zodiacal wheel. The sun is actually at the last degrees of Sagittarius, which is Ophiuchus, the 13th sign. And so this is where we have Apep, who we know as Apophis in the Greek mythology. And so going from left to right, on the top, we have the barge being supported and the sun under the barge as representation of the underworld. And remember, we had those 7 figures in the slide there. That representation of 7, we could interpret as the 7 deadly sins. What are they? Pride, lust, gluttony, sloth, greed, lust, and one more I'm not thinking of immediately. But getting back to where we were, the center picture is where we see Osiris or Wasir, which is spelled Owsir, Wasir, is standing on the sun as indicative of it being in the underworld with him. Remember, we prepared him for resurrection, wrapped him in cloth, anointed him with oil, and he's in the mummified form, ready for resurrection. We also saw Aset, or who we know as Isis, preparing for her resurrection. And so we are already in the underworld over on the right-hand picture, in the darkness, on the barge, and under the barge, we see Apep. And this is the shadow side of Wajet. Wajet, which appears on the Uraeus in the state of enlightenment, on the Neset Biti, the pharaoh's Uraeus, alongside Nebhet, who we met in the last video, as representation of Lower Kemet as the vulture. And so the lower row here on the left shows Ra and his supporters in the barge fighting Apep, fighting Apophis, the snake, the serpent. And so they're struggling. He's poking them with the spear, stabbing them with the spear. But we notice that there's a lot of green in this picture here. And the colors are always representative of something in the reliefs. And so where green is concerned, we've seen Osiris as a green mummy. And so this basically just says that he is ripe for resurrection. He's ripe for resurrection. I ain't mean to sing it to you. But in the center there, we have Wajet in the form of the blue lotus on the head of whomever this is. But we see a lot of iconography there. We see the Ka being expressed, meaning the spirit upholding the sun in the barge while it's in the underworld, being supported by the two twins back to back, supporting this figure in the middle here. I don't know who they are, but on the right, we have the scarab beetle supporting the sun as it's going through the healing process. How do I know that it's going through the healing process? Because we have the Eye of Horus and the Eye of Ra. And so they are supporting the scarab beetle as it supports the sun in the underworld as it struggles with Apep or Apophis. And so always at the threshold of the entrance or exit of the underworld are going to be the Aker lions. And they are these figures here on the top left. One seems to be inhaling some substance there. Looks like a blue lotus flower or whatever, getting his buzz on while they're guarding the sun as it dips below the horizon. And then on the right, we have one of them springing into action as it slices Apep as Apep swallows the sun. So as we're in the underworld, we're dealing with a lot of snakes and scorpions, and it's grimy and greasy, and we're dealing with some shady people here. So in the underworld, we have to use our discernment. This is Neptune energy. It's muddy. It's a lot of sludge down here. We can barely see our way. It's dark. So we have to discern the darkness and find some type of light at the end of the tunnel. So we have to find or discern whether or not we're dealing with poison or potion, because we all know that snake venom, scorpion venom can be poisonous, or it can be the potion we need for healing. And so in the bottom row there, that's what we see as Wajet, who is guarding the Shin, as we saw, and I believe it was the third installation, hallowed be thy name, the second petition of the perfect prayer, protects the name in the Shin. And if we elongate the Shin, it becomes the cartouche. And the cartouche protects the name of the Neset Biti, or the Pharaoh, for eternity. And if we go into the story of Akhenaten, this is where we get the story of how he protected his name, and or he did not protect his name, or his name was wiped out. And from that point on, his name was always in the cartouche, or those that followed him ensured that their names were in the cartouche. So there we have Wajet in ascension mode with the sun, protecting the cartouche, the Neset Biddy's name. In the middle there, we have Apep or Apep or Apophis if you want, in the ascension mode with the sun on its back, and the Skura beetle. Same serpent. But I want you to take note of the right-hand picture on the bottom there because we have the raising of the Jed. The Jed pillar is on an angle of 23 degrees. And so the symbology is the tilt of the earth, which most will say is 23 and a half degrees, but it's actually 23 and 26 to 27 degrees. 23.26 is what I got from NASA last. And I was taught by one of my instructors that it was 23.27. And I think that difference has to do with Tonga Hong Apai that erupted a couple years ago. And I know I jacked that all the way up. But 23 and 0.26 is the declination of either of the planets, whether you're in the northern or southern hemisphere. And that's important right now because we actually have like 4 orbs, meaning planets. And I said orbs because one of them is the asteroid Vesta that are out of bounds. We talked about Pluto being out of bounds, Mars being out of bounds, meaning that they're below that 23.26 degree declination. So they're just rogue. They just out of control out there. So let's move on because what we're talking about here is the secret of life, that the secret of light. And that's what it's all about, love and light. The principle of love is the desire to give. The law of love is the rhythmic balanced interchange between all givings and receiving. It says here regivings. But the symbol of love is the wave of dual light, which gives and receives equally and rhythmically. And although it says regives, we understand it as giving and receiving. And we spoke about that because that is the balance of Ma'at. When you give without receiving, you become a martyr. And so that takes you out of balance as well as over giving or the reverse. So we see this sine wave here in different colors, which are representations of different tones. The 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 visible planets. And each one of the planets have its own tone. And I'm going to put that in the description box because I think it's so cool. When we were talking about the circle of fifths, I have a video, which is like 3 to 5 minutes that plays the tones of the planets, and it illustrates how the synchronization of the planets create your own personal song. And so all the celestial bodies orbit in harmonic resonance when we think about how we're all given a balance of challenges and attributes and talents to work with when we come to the planet. And so a different way of looking at it, that same 0 point being the equator, we see here the 4 seasons. We also see here the solstitial gates of man and the gods. The gates of man being in Cancer, if we recall, being ruled by the moon, is the closest orb to the earth. And the gates of the gods being Saturn, Father Time, Chronos, being the last of the visible planets. And so when we think of the gates of the gods and the gates of man, we can think obviously, or it's obvious to us, that the gates of man would be the earth, but the gates of the gods and what that might mean might be different. If we think about it in terms of the planets, of course, we're talking about the cosmos. But there was also a time when the gods ruled the earth, they say. And so what did they mean by that? What they meant was that the nature's forces were in control of the planets at a time before man. So when you think about it in logical terms, we're talking about fire. We're talking about the Deccan traps, which took over India, the Deccan traps, which took over India, burned it to a crisp. There was the Siberian traps. You had all types of wild tsunamis and hurricanes and so forth as the earth was settling into the state that we enjoy today. So to sum things up, time and increments of time is very valuable to us. We value our time and equate it with money. Time is money. It's our most valuable asset, or could it be asset? As I looked at it and remembered where gold is on the periodic table and its abbreviation, as we recognized in the last video, AU, and thought about the fact that we're here in the underworld in our assimilation, it just brought me to the lower vibration that's attached to the value we give to money, as opposed to a person's ability to perform. We don't always equate that. And so that is a lower vibration. And so when we look at the lower vibration of Aset or Isis, we see all of this iconography or symbology, such as the anagram of the word prices. We think about maritime law. For all of my UCC people out there, we know that our money is attached to water. It's currency. We like to keep it fluid. It flows. We secure it in banks, sometimes even vaults. When we fall short, we're underwater. Nowadays, we are dealing in cryptocurrency, crypt being the root word. And here in the past couple of decades, we've given a lot of power to corpse. Mortgage, when we break it down, mort or muerto means death. Muerto in Spanish means death. Gauge means to secure. And so the banks are securing the debt in case of your death, and we're paying for it. So this is the lower vibration of Venus. So we can read all kind of stuff into that, the sine wave on its back, and we can read all kind of things into that, and the serpent, single serpent on the staff, is Asclepius, but the double serpent is, of course, the caduceus, which is the healing staff. So while we're in the underworld, we're being guarded by a couple of ladies that are very powerful against the snakes and serpents and scorpions, venomous creatures that we're coming into contact with out here in these streets. So we have Serket. Now, Serket and Neith, I thought may have been from some of the later dynasties, but these ladies are pre-dynastic netters. They go back to 6,000, 9,000, 9,000 BC. And Neith becomes later Athena in the Greek pantheon. So they're the guardians of the underworld, two of them anyway. And Serket is called the Terrible One, or that may be Neith. But Serket definitely is the netter or guardian of medicine. She heals the venomous and scorpion bites that one may encounter. Neith is the goddess of creation, war, hunting, and wisdom. And she survived as part of the ancient Kemetan pantheon, and as the cultures or the inhabitants of the region evolved, she was also a part of the Roman pantheon as well as Athena. So she's considered one of the primordial deities. So they go all the way back to the OGs. So we got them protecting us in the underworld. And so we end with the dragon. We end with Draco, the Hydra, and serpents. They're actually all the same. This is Ophiuchus. Even in the left corner, the dragon we see in that may be Arabic, it looks like. I thought it may have been Chinese, but it appears to be Arabic. Then you have over here the Greek illustration. But there's something missing with Ophiuchus here as we go through Ophiuchus as a constellation. What's missing is the serpent bearer, the person that is in the constellation, or the man that is outlined in the constellation of Ophiuchus wrestling with the serpent. And so I'd like to propose that that might be us as a collective, wrestling as the serpent bearer with the energies that we are struggling with today. And so before I stop my share, I want to also show you in the sky or on the zodiacal wheel, at the very least, the configuration that we're looking at. And I included all of these, the Netaru that I just spoke about, and included in our simulation. And so if you'd like to look these asteroids, or actually their nodes, if you'd like to look up these points yourself, Ampu, who is Anubis, is 1912. Apep, the serpent, is 99942. Heru, or Horus, is 1924. Aset or Isis is 42. Nebhet, her sister, would be Nephthys, is 287. Then you have Neith, who we just met, who becomes Athena, is 1122. And Wasir, who's Osiris, is 1923. Serket, the scorpion, as we leave the underworld and look forward to our resurrection as a collective, Serket is 136818. And here I also included the Hopi node because I think that is very important because they are also leading us into this new era with the Kachina, the blue star, and then the red star. Look forward to doing the next one. I had fun preparing it. I had to tell myself to stop already and stop adding to it, but I appreciate you hanging in. Don't forget to click the like button, subscribe if you will, and share the video. See y'all in the next one. Y'all take it light. All right. Peace.